We are live. Hopefully we're live. That's a great question.
The SSID's Thunder Launchpad.
Great. Awesome.
I got a couple other buddies coming too. So
Cool. Now we're streaming, so we'll just give people time. I'm gonna go ahead and tweet a link here so people know where to find it. 1718. Yeah.
My brain said.
Or is it, yeah, it
All
is
small, all run together. Yeah. Small, all run together. Yep. The audio works.
Jake, you can grab my seat if you want to, boss. Right, see you. All you. Pony up at the front.
What's that? What's up, man? Good. How are you? So we're gonna do the awkward go around the room. You know, everybody introduce themselves and say what they do and where they're at or whatever. But we can give it a few minutes. Does anybody need like water, snacks? There's stuff back there if you want it.
You're a great host.
You guys are super comfortable. You guys are super like quiet. I'm not used to talking to a quiet group. So you guys got to get a little more rowdy. I know, now I'm a terrible host. Dadgummit. Just went down. Quick. Somebody save this.
You told me something that was wrong.
Whoa. Shots fired.
And I was just like, I guess if she didn't say anything, it would work.
When you walk away,
I'm sorry.
Dang. It's salty around that table right there. That's what it is. I think before we start, I'm going to get myself some water.
Actually, I did tell you guys one. See, I messed up twice now. So, yeah.
Guys, my homie Brian, by the way. Okay. I got it, boss. Thanks so much. Alright, man.
What are the chances that I spill this water all over everything?
You must run out of space.
I'm always hesitant to start because I just don't want to talk for this long, but you know. How's everybody doing?
Life is good.
Everybody survived the storms last night?
Does everybody have power back yet? Piedmont is still powerless right now. I'm moving tomorrow.
And that was wild. I wasn't even paying attention, and like the gust front hit, and I was like, whoa, I should probably check the weather. This is crazy. And then I turned on the news, flipped it on, it was Channel 9, and it was David Payne talking about an inland hurricane. Did you guys catch that? I was rolling. I was rolling. I was like,
I saw a screenshot of it. I didn't see it live, so I didn't know how real it was.
the
Floating around on Twitter, right?
yeah, the best. Somebody started a hashtag with it, and there were a lot of people like, "I survived the inland hurricane" or whatever. It was pretty fun. It's a good time. Sweet. We'll get,
About a mile and a half by the tornado. And the area was like, wow, this is getting a little bit intense. And then they said, like, the cross streets. I was like, wow, that's about a mile and a half for me.
it's like when I first moved to Moore, they were, everybody's like, "You're in Moore now. Like, you got to keep your head on a swivel." And I'm like, no big deal. And like these storms popped up, and they're like, "Don't worry, they're not going to be tornadoes." And they're like, "Well, there might be a tornado." And then it was like, "Well, there's a tornado right here." And I was like, "That's like where I'm at." So like I literally opened my blinds, and I look out and like there's a tornado right there, and like my fence, my privacy fence, just goes straight in the air. Like my neighbor's shed just goes straight in the air. I'm like, "Dag, we got to take cover like now." Like it was crazy.
Where did you live before Moore?
Northeast corner of the state, a little town, and then that's where I grew up. But before that, I was living in Las Vegas, where it rains 3 times a year.
No tornadoes in the
No tornadoes. Yeah, it rains and the whole place comes apart. Like nobody can drive. It gets wild.
Ethan is looking good too, dude. You prepping for December for winter time?
Yeah, winter's coming.
It is.
Whoa.
I got a couple more buddies coming, which
Okay.
I'm in like 30 minutes, so
Hey.
we're a little bit behind. So
We want to start. We can start.
Yeah, actually, I might get some food. Anybody else hungry?
Yeah.
Isn't there water?
Yeah, if you walk over by the bathrooms, there's a couple fridges there. There's a water cooler and some cups there. So it's cold water. We'll give it another few minutes before we start. We probably could have paused on the stream until we got really rolling too, but
Hey, do you know how the office spaces in here work? Do they lease these out? So I know the Thunder have the launch pad Stitch Crew.
Yep.
Did you guys meet Chris?
yep. And then up front used to be Exaptive. They moved just down the street. There was those spaces are open, and like there's the front space that's kind of like this right there next to it. But like there was some flooding, like when it really rains, like there was some water issues, and I think for them they were like sick of every time there was like a crazy storm of having to like bail out, like so. But yeah, they do lease the spaces, and I know like where I worked, we had the whole left side of the building before Webflow, and so like they lease out some of their spaces too. So
Is there a coffee shop in here?
no, there's a plenty of coffee machines, yeah, coffee makers. They're around,
It's tough to beat that Rise boxcar combo side by side.
dude, 100%. Boxcar, or like when I was down here, like it was Elemental, or honestly Leaf and Bee, or wherever you could hide, Yeah, I saw that.
Did they?
Yeah.
Great question.
Where do we?
They're off like 7th and Broadway.
It's with this new studio plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's that same center.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to find. It's like in the basement-ish. Yeah, really, really cool live.
Oh, you went?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is it busy or not?
Yesterday was really busy.
Yeah, they know that you
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sweetness.
Sorry, I was just trolling from my Instagram.
Dude, like you do whatever you got to do. Like Nelson will be happy if they're pictures. So like, like I say, rock it. Dude.
Bless you.
I know, it's like, it's how I know things are right with the world when I hear that sound go off, you know? Did you ever see the guy's Halloween costume where he was the Slack sound?
No.
And he was kind of dressed like the Slack logo, and he had like these wooden sticks, and he just would go and then hit the sticks together, and it sounded just like it. It was terrific.
That's funny.
I'm like, dude, this is great. Yeah, you have to find the video because it's the best. If not, I'll find it and share it with you guys.
Did you listen to the How I Built This up there? Did any of you listen to that podcast? Slack one is so interesting.
Slack. I love it.
Yo, have you guys seen these yet? The new wireless goes.
The what?
It's tough to beat. I'm about to make you wear one of these. Yeah. So it's an iPhone attachment. It's pretty much a lot of my. You can just attach right here. You can run around with it. It's got like a 200-foot range. Honestly, really good. Then it has like a little attachment that you can actually like put a lav mic if you like want to hide it here, and then put this like as a receiver right there. And it's just like there. And you just can't even see it. Put this bad boy up. All right, I think
We ready to roll this?
Let's quick show against who all has messed with Webflow yet. All right.
A few of us. We have
Maybe
so.
the transition to the good side.
What's our to the light side? What's our level of like who's a coder, who's not? So if you code, raise your hand. If you don't, raise your hand. Okay. If you're like put yourself on a different level, feel free to. In fact, let's just like do that. Let's go around the room. Everybody say their name, kind of like what you do, and kind of like where you're at with all of this. So we'll just start here. I'll put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
Brian, good. I'm Brian. I do brand identity design, but also do some website building, stuff like that. Nothing super crazy. Anything I build up until now has been done on Wix. Nick turned me on to this. Dug around a little bit, but not a whole lot. But my goal is to just 100% transition to this without seeing what it can do, and I see it can do what I want to do. So.
Awesome.
I'm Mary Disease, and I just made a transition before I worked all over real estate. So I started a co-founded company, did real estate property, and went back to some of the business operations, and now I'm doing my own thing, and my favorite thing is designing systems and workflows and making everything's like more efficient.
Those are my top dogs right there.
So I also do like website stuff on the side, and just because I enjoy it, I'm very excited about making things look good and also look cool.
I am building a global innovation network. So basically getting all the really smart and creative people from all around the world and on the same boat. And I'm kind of in the phase of, well, if I got all these people on the boat, what can we go do? So I'm kind of exploring all the different opportunities, things we can get plugged into. Currently in beta on that, so I have a relatively small test group. We're testing out some different strategies and models and stuff. So that's fun. And then the thing that's paying the bills right now is kind of similar to you. I basically help people work smarter, not harder. So systems and procedures and all that jazz. I previously did marketing and social media for a couple of years and kind of grew out of that and doing system stuff now.
Awesome.
My name is Will. I'm a software developer, full stack. I'm looking at starting freelancing when the office is closed and on weekends. Fully immersing myself in something like this that I have no clue about at all, especially if I can save some time on how to write code organize.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested to see what you have to say.
I have some ideas. We should talk. We could collaborate on some stuff. It'd be fun.
Cool. I'm Parker. I'm from Denton, Texas, so a little ways from home. My day job is communications at Custody, which is like a merchandise printing company.
Oh, I followed you on Twitter like 2 days ago.
Yeah. Okay. I'm on the Twitter following spree. So I'm basically a big king. Anyways, so I started doing websites on the side. Started in like WordPress, Elementor stuff. Did that for like
And Jake also went to a conference where Sal Khan used his computer with the Webflow sticker on it, so he got the 2 for it. That's pretty.
Yeah, that is one that got me onto Webflow. Actually, helps me get this job. So that's good. I appreciate it.
I'm Matt. My background is in web design as well. I came from the same role as probably many of you, working in like Squarespace websites, things like that, building those. But I got kind of frustrated with how limited it can be. So I can't remember how I found out about Webflow. Once I was in it, I was super hooked. So now I spend most of my time with Webflow. I'm still not good at it, but I'm trying.
He's good at it.
So, no, you could ask Ben. 'Cause
Humble
I'm on
brag.
forums all the time, and I'll try to answer questions, and then I'll just end up tagging Ben. So, yeah.
At least you're in the forums, though. That's all that matters. I'm Nick. I fly drones for a living, but highly interested in Webflow. I'm a Squarespace dude. Like everybody else, I hate how limited it is. I wish it would be sick to make quick prototypes. And then kind of in the process of revamping our website with what time I could find to do it. But yeah, I'm all in on Webflow. My skill set's literally a 2 out of 10, like compared to everybody else. So I'm literally at the ground floor, just like everybody else. So yeah, I think I'm gonna end up learning a lot as well. And dude, thank you, Ben, for hosting this, putting this together.
Happy to, man.
Thank you, Matt, for getting me addicted to Webflow. I'm all in, man.
Sweet. Well, I'm Ben, and native Oklahoman, and I started making websites. I'm old, so it was a long time ago, and I started with using Microsoft Front Page, so that should tell you how old I am. Yeah, right on. See, people are like, front what? So, when I started by, it was sort of a visual builder, but, writing code. So, I freelanced for a long time. I did WordPress. So custom WordPress and PHP, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all that fun stuff. And when I was actually working at the nonprofit across the way, we were trying to scale up and build all these, like a bunch of websites at once, but it was for schools. And I was looking at Macaw. I don't know if you guys remember it. It was a visual builder, and then InVision bought it, and then it went away. And I was like, dadgummit, there's got to be something like Macaw. And I found Webflow, and it was just, I don't know, like it was too good to be true. I think it was less than 4 hours. I built my first website with it, and then we were using it. It was before the CMS. We would build components with it, like tabs and like different things, and then we would export the code, take the code, throw it into the sites we were using to quickly, like if a school was like, hey, we need it to do this, and it was like, great, we'll build it in Webflow in no time, export the code, and just use it in our existing sites, and we built templates with it. So. And then one day I started talking to Waldo, who's head of support at Webflow, and then Vlad followed me on Twitter and messaged me and was like, oh my God, Vlad's following me, and then he messaged me, he's like, hey, want to work here? And I was like, yes, I do. But so anyway, ended up working at Webflow. I've been here since January. And so tonight I'm going to walk through something. Everybody's at like a kind of different levels, and I probably should have picked something more basic. And so, like, if you guys want to do something more basic, we can always go back. But my plan was to talk about how do you build like app-like functionality without knowing how to like, we've got one developer here, but like, if you don't have the skills to like, I've got to write all this code, I've got to connect it to these databases, I've got to get everything talking back and forth. And then the other thing is, like, anytime you code, if you do it or have done it, you like write the code and then you save it, you push it to a server, then you can, like, it's not instant. You're like, oh, right, I got to add this in. So there's all this back and forth. The cool part about this is with Webflow, it's visual development. So we're actually seeing everything real time. You get that instant feedback, which is pretty neat. So what I did is I was like, what is an app that I think people would use? And everybody's hiring somebody, right? At least that's the hope. And so I feel like this is something that doesn't go out of style. And it was like, how could you make an internal tool to track applicants? And then how can you make it where people in your team can interact with that and move people to different stages of, whether it's like we're doing an application review, whether it's, initial interviews, manager reviews, peer interviews, trial periods. How do we get people on kind of a board where we know where they're at and where we can kind of add in some things? And is that something we can do with Webflow? And so it is. I'm going to try to cover as much of this in the time that we have together as we can. What I can't cover, I'm going to try to continue to do on YouTube, and I'll share links with you guys. So if you want to follow through moving forward, you can. This project I'll make clonable, so you can just copy and steal it and use it. So this is Webflow. If you've not been in here before, it's what it looks like. This is the designer. And then this is my homepage. In order to get, so one thing that we don't have yet, and you can go onto our wish list and add more comments because there's already a ton, but is that user login functionality. So typically with sites like this, I use an app called MemberStack, and it's really cool. There are a bunch of videos out there that talk about, and they've got guides on how to use it with Webflow, so I'm not going to cover that, but that gives you the login functionality that you need to be able to have users log in, only specific users, and then you can even give certain users access to pages and other users.
Like a no-code
Right, like a user system where we decide who gets access to what pages, right? So we can kind of do that this way. So I'm just going to start with, this was my initial homepage. So basically what I had going here was you land, it tells you, hi, whoever you are, because we could do that. And then here's some applicants that are ready for the next step. So this would be people who have already started the process we've been working with. And then on the left side, it would be people who are brand new, who have applied since maybe the last time you've been in there, or people who haven't really reviewed those applications yet. And so for each, in fact, I'm going to open up the published version of this. And so for each applicant, we have their name, which is all dummy content, obviously, the job that they applied for, and then links to their resume, their cover letter, portfolio, their LinkedIn profile, and then we can go view that applicant and go into detail, but it's just kind of a quick overview. I have the date, so this would be the date that they applied, is what that would be, so we'd see that, and then we would see what stage they're in here. So if they're just coming in, they're going to be new, or we're going to be reviewing what they're doing. So that's what we would start here. The star is on for everybody because I have a number field, and if it's greater than 3, show the star. And the whole point of that was, and I can show you guys how to do that here in a minute, but the whole point of this was, just wanted you to understand my thinking here. The whole point of this was, let's say I want somebody with 3 years of experience, right? They put in their years of experience. We can say, if they have 3 years of experience or more, we're going to star this. We can do different things based on what job they applied for or whatever our requirements might be. But it's kind of a quick way to go okay, who are my experienced people and who spent time in the field? And you could use other criteria as well to kind of go, how do I weed out and know maybe who I really want to target first as I start reviewing applications. So
and that would flag it based on their
years of
right?
experience.
It wouldn't be somebody internally going and saying,
No, it's just automated. So it'd all just be, now we could add a button where you could star it, and then it would star the person, and we could do that manually too. I'll show you how to do that. So when we build in Webflow, we do it all visually, so it's all here. And then what we do is, I've got an application page here. So this is where people would apply. This would be open, wouldn't require a login. And this is a really short application, obviously, but first name, last name, email address, phone number, and I got Webflow swag for anybody who can guess where that phone number came from. No Googling though, don't Google. And then a place to upload your resume, place to upload your cover letter, a link to LinkedIn profile, link to your portfolio, and then how many years experience do you have, right? And people would submit that. So what I want to show you guys how to do is how to take this, and on form submission, let's create something in the Webflow database. So with Webflow, if you haven't played with it yet, we have CMS collections over here on the left-hand side. And so in our applicants here, this lists everybody who's an applicant. And I can manually create this in the designer, or somebody in the team who had editing access could create this and put this in. But what I want to do is say when somebody fills out that application form, I want to automatically put that information here into my collection. How do I do that? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to walk through this real quick. So first things first, like you actually have to fill out the form one time. So this is where a lot of people get stuck, but the form has to have been filled out once in order for you to be able to use the data. So I'm just going to fill it out real quick. All applies. Yep. And let me walk through it real quick. So let me go to the application page so I can show you. So this is just a basic Webflow form. And I just styled the inputs a little bit. So it's label, and then you can see over here in the settings I can choose how I label those, whether or not they're required, whether I want to autofocus anything. What's really cool is in Webflow we can say, so autofocus means as soon as the page is loaded, the focus is going to be right there. It's automatically, cursor will be there. They don't need to click in. So, first field, you might autofocus it. No, it's not a stupid question. In fact, there's a lot of times, like I see in the forums or people who hit me up on Twitter, like my page just loads halfway down the page. They'll have like an email sign up and they've got that set to autofocus. So people load the page, it jumps halfway down because it wants them to fill out their email, right? So that's a common thing. Chaos. Chaos. Don't do that. And you can see we can choose the type of field we got here. So like email, it's going to make sure that like they're following like an email format. There is a password. You can't use password unless you're using a third-party service, just because we don't want people building sites at Webflow that look like the Facebook login, because it's really easy to recreate that and people just like taking your password thing going and like so we no. So if it's a native Webflow form, we don't let you use that, right? But it is there, like if you connected it to a third, like member stack, you can connect it and use that so people get the dots when they type, right?
Memberstack.io.
Yeah, it's legit. There's also one called Member Space. And then like if you're like super advanced and you're cool with like syncing databases and like you're in that automation flow, there's something called Knack that's pretty cool that will do it too. Definitely worth checking out if you're looking for some of that other functionality. Not yet, but I think they're working on it. I can't say for sure. They have a roadmap up though, so you should go look. I want to say that there was some sort of integration for signups that they were working on, but I don't know which one it was. Yeah, they were a product hunt. Yeah, they had a great launch. So definitely worth checking out. And they work with a lot. They'll work with a lot of different stuff. But they actually built part of their app in Webflow. So like it was like, so they've got a special place in their heart for Webflow, and then they've got a lot of guides for Webflow stuff. So anyway, so got that phone number. You can use a phone field, and then you can have a number field where people get the little counter at the sides where they can count it up. And then like in this case, we want to like filter things based on how many years of experience that they have. I don't want somebody to type in 3. I want the number 3. I don't want somebody like 2.5 typing it out, whatever. Like I want a number, right? And so that number field will force them to do that. I have the upload field. Now the upload file field, in order to use it, like you have to use the business hosting, which is the highest tier hosting that we have. But totally worth it if you've got a project like this. And then when you select it, you can actually see the different states. So I can see the uploading state. I can see what it looks like when it's success, so they get that file uploaded, and then the X, so like you can close that out and say, no, I don't want to do that. We can see the error, and we can style all this, right? Like I can jump in here, and I can style what my error looks like. And then you can see the different error types, so file size, invalid file type, generic error. So we have all of those. And you can only allow specific file types, so you can say, hey, I only want documents. Right, like I don't want anything but documents, and I only want images or whatever. So you can go through and be restrictive of what you allow. So I have an upload for my resume. I have an upload for cover letter, and then LinkedIn profile. It's just a regular plain text field. Link to the profile, same, or portfolio is the same thing. Number of years in the field, same thing, right? So I just built it, and then we got a submit button, and then your form, just like everything else, you can see all the different states. So like this is normal, but I can also see what it looks like when they fill it out. I can style this up, I can put in images, I can I like to put in like GIFs here sometimes and make them kind of goofy. Use JavaScript sometimes and randomize them just to give people, something different. And then you can also, here you can show the error state of the form. So,
Sorry for interrupting.
No.
That's my homie Brandon.
Hey, Brandon.
Give him a quick little intro. Brandon Clark Media, web dude, video dude.
Legend.
Like the rest of us. Brandon, I got you this seat right here. No.
We need to pull another chair.
No, you're good. I'll go sit right there. Sorry, I got a hurt foot.
You're good. So just like everything else over here, I can go from normal to success to error on my states for my form as well. So, and then cool part about Webflow, and you guys might have seen the video runner floating around social media, but to publish, anytime I make a change, I can go up to publish and just hit publish. It deploys the site. That's it. Publishes, changes go live, right? So that's what that's what I built here for my form. Now, one thing you'll want to know. What's that?
I'll wait.
Well, go ahead, ask the question.
So on the form block, because I was going to use a form at one point, and then ended up just embedding a third party.
Right.
Form and everything. But the part that screwed me up was just like the actual submit function, like what.
Where does it go?
Yeah.
How do we control all
I
that?
just noticed yours didn't have anything in it, and so I was curious,
So if you don't touch any of the functions, it will work. It's native Webflow stuff. And we can actually, you can come in here and change, and I'll show you how that works, but you can change the action, whether it's get or post, and you can put in custom actions here. So if you have like a web app that you built something on Heroku and you're gonna like use this to call something, or you're gonna post something to that database, like you can do that. So if you want to get advanced, you can get as advanced as you want, right? But a lot of people use this to put in MailChimp. Like MailChimp, you can get the embed code, and it's got the submit action, and you can take that, throw this in here, and when people fill it out, it's a MailChimp that adds them right into your MailChimp database. So now you have that person as a subscriber, right? And so you can do email signups, or you can do it for a bigger part of forms, as long as they match in MailChimp and in Webflow. So, but if we come into project settings, there is a forms tab in here. So in forms, I can kind of come through and I can say, okay, what's the from name? Who do I want it to be from? I can say, I want it to be from my ATS, which is my applicant tracking system, right? And it's got to be probably a certain amount of characters here. So yeah, applicant tracking system. So, and then I can, who's getting these? So I can say, this email address, it's comma separated, so I can put in email, who's getting these notifications, right? And then I can put in a subject line. So, and then you'll notice that we have variables here like site name, form name, so I can say it's from this site, from this form, and it's going to get that information. And then who's being replied to. So if there's an email in there, and let's say it's a contact form, I can make sure that I reply to the email of whoever was submitting that, right? So like when I get it as an email, I don't have to worry about finding that, copy and pasting it. Like I can just reply to the message and keep the chain going. And then we can set up the email template. So there is the form data tag. So we can say, okay, here's all of the data that came in with the form. And then it's just all dumped into an email. You want to make sure when you do this that you're not using role-based emails. So that tends to be a problem sometimes. If it's info at, webmaster at, like whatever, we use Mailjet, but it doesn't matter what service you use. Those tend to get blacklisted from time to time. It's kind of out of our control. And so like you'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting emails. And so it's better if it's name at, and then, you can even, I know people who create dummy people and then forward that on with Gmail rules or whatever. Like if you've got to have a bunch of people getting it, but whatever, like you can put that in there. And then we do have the ability to put in reCAPTCHAs. So you can integrate that. You can go get your reCAPTCHA keys from Google and add those into your forms. And then right here, this is what I wanted to come look at. So I can restrict upload file access. So that means those files that people are uploading, I can say you have to have a login to Webflow as the person who built it, or as somebody who's collaborating and editing in order to access those files. I turn this off so I can use it with Zapier. And so you can kind of do your own thing, kind of how you want to track this. But This is kind of how I like to do it. Another way that you can do this, like I'm just going to show you how to take the links to the file and put them into Webflow. But the other thing that you could do is using Zapier, we'll talk about this, you could take that file and you could add it to Dropbox or Google Drive, or like you could take that file and do things with it, and then you can share that link, or you could just share that folder so people have access to those. So there are a lot of different ways around this. And then all your form submissions are going to show up right here. So they'll be in a table, and then you'll be able to download them as CSVs and take that data and work with it if you want. So this is where we'll do all of our our form notifications are all right here. So I'm going to jump back in the designer. And then one thing I'll show you on my applicants. So I've got my applicants here. You'll see all these forms. One thing that I don't have is I don't have a field for that I'm going to add in here. I'm just going to call it item ID. And then this is a Webflow field that we're going to get. So anytime we work with Webflow, we need the item ID of that specific item in order to make changes to the Webflow database, right? So, and I'll show you how that works, but you need to be able to grab that item ID, and I always include that in my collections. So a field for it. So let's jump in. Actually, did I finish filling this out? I did not. Okay, Ben Parker. We'll do Ben at Webflow. Please don't spam my email. All right, I'll put in, I'm just going to use the same number. Anybody want to take a guess at where that phone number came from?
I still have no idea. I thought it was an airport code, honestly.
So there's an episode of, this is nerdy, there's an episode of Seinfeld where Elaine gives her number. That's the number that she gives out in the show. So, yeah, no Webflow swag. So, all right. So I'm just going to call this resume. I'm just making a doc real quick that I can use in the form. This is a resume. And then I'm just going to download this as Microsoft Word doc because I did not prepare beforehand with this. I'm sorry. And then I'll call this my cover letter. What? Oh. Yeah, docs.new, sheets.new, slides.new. They'll just get you started right with a brand new doc from Google. So if you're looking for like that quick way in, it's a great way to do it. So, and if you don't know, with Google, you can file download as. So you can download it as Microsoft Word, PDF, whatever that you want, and then take it and use it. So I've got my resume and cover letter now. So I'll show you what this looks like. I'm just going to upload. Go to my downloads here, resume. It's going to upload. Boom, there it is. Upload this cover letter. It shows up, and you'll see I could remove those and replace them if I wanted as a user. LinkedIn profile. I'm just going to say, webflow.com. That's fine. And we'll say even though this is definitely not my work, thank you, Ryan, and the Brand Studio team for all the awesome stuff you do. And then I'll just say 5 years, right? And then I can submit this. Boom. Now the submission has gone through. And then you'll see it reloaded on me. I have a master code, and let me just show you this real quick. It's a site-wide, and I typically do this by page, but I am using some custom code here. And it is this right here, and I'll share it with everybody later so you have access to it. And I'll make this available so you can clone it. But essentially what this does is JavaScript that says on a form submission, I just want to reload the page. And you'll see why I'm doing that here in just a few minutes. And I typically only put that on the pages that I need it. I put it on every page. So that's why it refreshed like that. So now we're going to jump into, yeah. Okay, so that's a great one. So can a user edit their profile afterwards? There's a way to set that up, but not in this instance, not in this real world version. But yes, we could do that. We could do that. So now when I'm in Zapier, so all I'm going to do is say I'm going to make a Zap, and then I'm just going to choose a trigger, choose an app. So everything starts on an action or on a trigger in Zapier. So I'm just going to say, hey, give me a Webflow form submission, right? So I can choose Webflow and say form submission. I'm going to save and continue. And then I need to connect my Webflow account. So, what's that?
What were the other two things on that besides form submission? There's a new order placed.
Yeah, so I'm going to call this, it's new order and updated order. So those are both triggers that you have within Webflow, right? So now I can just choose my site and say, okay, this is my applicant tracking system site. Whenever this goes through, and I'm going to choose my job application form. Okay. Now I'm going to pause here and show you another. I'm going to go back. Actually, we'll keep going. So I'm going to say job application, and then what I do is I say it'll show you a sample. So it's going to show me the sample data. So it says, oh, look, here's all the stuff that was filled out, right? So I have all this data available, and I can continue on, and then I can add a step here. So then what I like to do next is I'm just going to create a live item. So these are all the actions I can take with Webflow. I can update an item, unfulfill an order, fulfill an order if I'm e-commerce, update live item, create an item. That just creates an item, and it's not live on the site and published, right? So it just creates that item in the database. And maybe, so I know people who have workflows like this and for internal tools, and they just create the item and they don't make it live, and they have one person who logs in on a regular basis, and they turn them into live items so people who log in can see them. So that way, you're vetting the applicants beforehand before they ever see them. You can kind of like, okay, yes, this one's okay, this one's okay, this one's not. So if you wanted to have that kind of more manual approach, you could. Create a live item, update an order, refund an order. So we're going to create a live item, and I'm going to save and continue. So I'm going to create a live item on that same site. You can choose your site. If you're smart, you just authorize your entire account, and then you can search. I do it site by site for some stupid reason because I'm a glutton for punishment. And then this is where you set up your template, right? So I can say, okay, so the site, applicant tracking system, the collection I want to update is applicants. So I want to add a new applicant here. And then now it shows me all the fields in the Webflow collections database. So I have them all here. And now I can start placing those in. So up here in the top right-hand corner, I get this little icon, and I can start pulling this. So first name, I can match it up to first name. Last name, I can match this up to last name, right? Email, I can go ahead and pull in email. Yeah. So live item, I want it to automatically show up on the page. I don't want anybody to have to go through and manually in the Webflow designer, right? I want it to show up so people who log in with a member stack login can it's automatically on the page. I want to. So you can create an item which isn't live on the site for people to see, and you can create a live item which is live on the site for people to see. There's two. That's a great question though. So phone number, I can choose my phone number. Resume, and then I can come through here and say, okay, here's the resume, here's the cover letter. I can just go through and match these. LinkedIn profile, there it is. Portfolio, my wish and my dreams, years of experience, so I can jump through and add all these in. Now, one thing you didn't see on mine was which job is the person applying for, because I just had an application page. I'll show you guys how we can automatically pull that here in just a few minutes, but it would be with a different form. So, same form, but a little different twist. So item ID we'll leave blank for now, and then for the name, what I would do is just use first name, space, and we can combine these, last name. So now here's this person, that's going to be the name of it. Is it archived? These are required. No, it's not going to be archived. No, it's not a draft. And then I can hit continue. And then, here's all the data, and I can send a test, and we'll see if it goes through. Okay, so we got an error. So we had trouble sending your test through. This item can't be published. Your collection structure has changed. So I went through and changed some things, but I didn't publish my site. So anytime I went through and added this item ID, I don't know if you guys remember me adding that in, and I didn't publish after I did that, so it always throws an error whenever you do that. So we can resend a test, and you can see a test item was sent to Webflow just now. And if I come back and refresh the designer, then now it's going to be sitting in there, right? So here's my applicants, here's all my information, it's all sitting in there, right? So now, boom, they filled it out. It's here. And if we go to the page, you can see, hey, right up top, this is the last one, the newest one in, just added. It's there in the page for me to work with, right? Okay. So
Like when you click into the file, like where's that link? Like you're gonna click for the file.
like, okay, yeah, boom. So it would just download it here for me since it's a Word doc. If it was a PDF, it would drop it in a new tab if I'm in Chrome, you know. So just like that, it's created and it's in. So we used that form. Now, what's really cool about Webflow is we have dynamic data, right? So that's what this is. This is back-end data. We can play with this a little bit. So instead of using, so I had an application page, and this was like hard-coded, or not hard-coded, but one created one form. What I did is I recreated this on my jobs template. So now what I could do is I could pull data in from the job and include it. So right now all I have in my jobs collection is literally just the name of the position, junior designer, senior designer, whatever it might be. But you could get, you could have all kinds of data here. One thing that we could have done is filled this one out, and then with Webflow, we're allowed to pull in some custom code. So one thing that I could do is I could add in an embed field here. So I'm just going to do that real quick, a custom code embed. And then I could include like an input field, right? So this is what my inputs look like, when they're coded and they're not visual, right? This is what that looks like.
Oh, this is the old school.
This is the old school way, right? So what I'm doing is input types text. I'm even going to give it the same class. So I'm going to say the class, equals input, which is what I named mine. But what I'm going to do is for the value, which is what gets submitted, I'm going to backspace value, and I'm going to say, give me the name of the position. And so if I save and close, now you'll see the job title is down here in a field, and it's going to get submitted with the form. So I could pull even what they're applying for dynamically. So I could have a job listing page that lists the jobs. When it says apply, it goes to this page, and we're pulling in data that automatically gets submitted. And then what you can do, you can say instead of input type equals text, you can even change this to hidden. And if you change that to hidden, now they don't even see it, right? So there's data that gets submitted. They still see that same form, but now I know what job they're applying for. I don't need them to type it out, and so I can pull that dynamically if I want.
So the way you made that template page.
Great question.
Yeah.
So Webflow has there's our static pages up at the top, and then anytime we create a collection, down at the bottom we get these template pages that automatically get created. And you can see here, it shows me the jobs template. I design it just like anything else. But right here, I can choose between what job I'm on. I can see it's going to look the same on every page, except that now I'm here on senior designer instead of junior designer. And if I jump in here, and I expand all of this fun stuff here, and I jump into my custom code, and I've got to move this preview here. So if I jump into my custom code, you'll see that I'm going to make this not hidden. I'm going to make it text now. You'll see that now it says senior designer, and then I can flip to this one as junior designer. That data changes based on what item I'm on. So.
I was confused by so if you look at your applicants template, that would be.
So this would be my person. So this is me. I just applied. Here's the links to my stuff. By default, I'm in application review. I'm new, and I'll walk through kind of what I did here before we get out of here, just so you can kind of see. But so now that I'm created, I wanted to show you another page that I made. And the other page that I made was it's a page called Tracking Board, and this looks really busy. But basically, it's everybody who's applied. I haven't filtered this yet. I'm going to show you how to do this. But essentially, this is people who applied, and they are in these different states. I'm going to show you how you could have this board for your people internally, and when somebody moves from one stage to another, they can push a button. It swaps them to the next set of boards. So now we know they've progressed along to that next step, and we can kind of get a high level overview of where they're at in the process with this page. But then also on their applicant page, I would be able to see where they're at. And I could fill out information here and also move them from spot to spot on this page as well. So Everything's connected. Yeah.
I have a question on the basically hidden data track.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you can track, I guess, the source of where they came from? So say if I was driving traffic from multiple sources and I wanted to filter based on what platform that came from, is there a way you can integrate that into the form? I don't know how far back you can track it so you can put that back.
I don't know if you can go too far back. One thing that you could do though is like if you're using referral links with like, you know, in the URL question mark, you know, whatever, like a lot of people do, you could use some JavaScript to pull that and store it as a variable, and then you could just pass it through to a, yeah.
Say here they came from what product hunt or
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, you can definitely do that. So so now that we've submitted it, we've automatically created somebody. So now it's how do we move them from spot to spot, right? How do I say this person, instead of view applicant, how do I change this to where like move to the next step or move to initial interview? How can I do that? So I'm going to show how I accomplish this, right? So the first thing that I've got to do is I've got to find a way to show in the Webflow collection what stage they're on. I don't have that built in, so I'll show you what I do here. For applicants, what I would do is I would just add a field, and we could call it a check mark, or we could say even an option field. So with this one, it might be best to do an option field, and we could say, you know, what stage are they on? And so I need to add in my option. So it was application review, I think. I think I would remember this. Application review, and then maybe it's initial interview, and then it's a manager interview. I'm going off the top of my head. I hope I get this right. You guys are going to find out whether I paid attention when I built this. Peer interview, and then maybe we finish them off with like a trial project, right? So I can save that field. And then we could have, like if we have different types of jobs, one thing that we could do is we could have one application dumps it into, so we can have like designer jobs, and those jump into designer applications. And if we had somebody who is coder, like they might be coding like an engineer applications, and we can have different collections for each type, so we can customize these fields to make them different for our process. So now I have that stage in here. I can save this collection, and you'll notice when I come in here, I have an option now to choose what stage they're in, right? So I can say, oh, okay, so I just applied, so I'm in application review, and so I'm just going to save that. And then what I can do is come here to this tracking column, the first one, application review. I can choose my collection list, and I can go over here to the settings, and then I can filter this. So I can say the stage equals application review. I only want to show people who are there, and I save it. Now I'm the only person there, right? So that's where I'm at by default. You know, maybe when I set up that Zap by default, I would set that to application review, and that's the first one. So when somebody comes in, they're here. But now I want to move them to initial interview. Like, they liked me enough to interview me, which sounds too good to be true, but let's just say it happened. Dream scenario, right? And so now I need to have a button that moves this. So with Webflow, the only triggers I have, I don't know if anybody remembers them, but it's form submission, order update, right? So I need actually a form here, not a button. So I'll show you how I do this. I like to put in a form.
How'd you do that little search thing like that?
Okay. So Command E or Command K pulls up Quick Find. Before I worked at Webflow and they had this in beta, I used this more than anybody else, I think. So, and I still use it heavily. It's one of my favorite features, and I think it's super underused. So like, you have settings over here on the right-hand side where you can click on this cogwheel, and so you can choose what's available. You can add elements, add symbols, add assets. You can select something on page. So if you have a bunch of items on page and you want to look for something, you're like, I know I named it whatever, you can search for that. Or if you're looking for an embed element, you can search embed, and you can actually select the on-page element. It'll take you there. So you can go to a page, or you can go to a collection.
That's
So
Command K or Command
Command E. And that's, if you're a Windows user, I'm sorry that you're a Windows user. And also it's control and not command. What's that, Matt? I'm sorry, bud. I feel like, yeah, that wasn't fair. That was not right. I apologize.
Totally fair.
I apologize for that. That's mean. No, that was mean. I'll admit that was mean. Okay, so what I like to do when I do this is I like to take this form block. By default, they just show name and email address. So I pull out my labels, and then what I like to do is I like to drop in that embed element again, and then I delete the only native element in here. And so now all I have is this embed element and a submit button. So I go back through the same thing. Now, I want to jump back into Zapier here because we created the item. I actually need to show you guys the next step because I'm getting ahead of myself. So we have the form submission. It creates the live item. Now we need to add a step. And this is going to sound completely counterintuitive, but we want to choose Webflow, and we want to update a live item. And so we'll update a live item. We'll choose the same site. And it's going to load here. I'll choose my site. Now, you'll notice applicant tracking system, collection. I want to choose applicants. And then you'll notice it says I have to have an item ID. Where do I get that? Well, once we created an item, if we go back to that create item step, now the item ID is available for us. So it's saying this is the item that's getting updated. And we could go through and we don't need to really update anything else. One thing that is required is I pull the name from the step before. We need to make sure it's not archived and it's not draft, right? And then I need to pop in that item ID into the item ID field in Webflow. So I'm going to go back to create live item and pull that item ID, just the ID, and put it in here. And so now I'm going to put the item ID will actually be here in Webflow. So if you see when it was created initially on the first step, we go down, there is nothing in the item ID, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply come in here and say, okay, pop in this item ID so I have it because I need it in order to be able to update things moving forward. So I'm going to continue this.
Can you make those fields read-only, or not read-only, but like not editable within Webflow?
Oh, my collection structure changed again because I was changing these. So the question is, can I make it where that's read-only and people can't jack with it? So the good news is in an application like this, people are logging in through MemberStack and they're not seeing this part, so they can't mess with it. But no, you can't. Not yet. But that's a great idea, and I'll write up a feature request for that tomorrow. And so that's a really great idea. And I bet there's already been conversations around that. What I typically do is you can put in descriptions of those fields, and I put in all caps, if you touch this, I will kill you, or something, like probably not. That's a little extreme. But please do not touch this. You will break everything. And, I might egg your house. I don't know. We're going to, let them know about it, right? So I'm just going to publish this again. So publish successfully. Okay. And then I'm going to retest and send this to Webflow. Okay. So now it's gone through. And if I come back here and refresh, you'll see in my collection item that now that item ID is there and I have it. So it got placed in there. I now have access to that, right? Now let's go back to the Zap. Now we can do all kinds of things, right? So instead of using that form version of Webflow to notify people, there's a step in here where I can say, okay, use Zapier's email service and let's send an email. And I can say, send it to 5 people that I work with and say, hey, new application just came in, and I can pull this data from the form and even send them links to the resume, links to the cover letter. If you're a Slack organization, we could say you could connect your Slack and ping a channel like, hey, in this channel, new applicant, right? And this is the person's name. Here's a little bit snippet of information. Here's links to resume, right? Where they can just view it from right in Slack. And then you could even at the bottom say, hey, to view this person's application, go to this page. And they could just click and go out, log into the app, right? So we can do all kinds of things from it here. You can even send SMS notifications, so you can text people. So you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. So RSS feed, and you can do paths, right? So I could even say if A happens. So if it was a junior designer, I want this to happen. It's going to go to this. Or if this is a design position, I want this to happen. If this was an engineering position, it's a whole different group of people who get pinged. And so I need this to happen. I can choose what happens based on data that I have available, right? So we can do all kinds of things here. I'm just going to delete this because that would take us way down a path. Once we're done, we can name it. We can just say applicant, to system or whatever. And then you just click the little button, and boom, it turns everything on, and you're a genius now, and you're visually developing, right? Like visual engineer.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Would you say so? There was an opportunity to send an email through Webflow, like when they do the form. So would it be better to do that, or have it as a step in Zapier? What's more? Because I know Zapier breaks sometimes, or it's like down. Like that was a bummer a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've built an internal tool that we use at Webflow using Zapier, and so when it doesn't work, you're like, my day. And so yeah, I use Zapier just because I feel like I might have 40 forms here, and maybe they're not all pertinent to every person. So with this, I can specify in what situation who's getting notified. And you can even do, like, you'll notice I chose the form. I could even use this as basic, right? Like I have 4 forms on my site. If this one's filled out, these people are notified. If this one's filled out, these people are notified. We don't have that built into Webflow.
It's also nice because then you can send it to applicants.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yes.
Here's what happens next.
100%, right?
Please confirm all these.
Right. Or does this look accurate to you? If you feel like you made a mistake, please let us know. Since we. Yeah. Well, and we can do that. We can say reject applicant and automatically send an email, right? Like we can do that. So there are all these different things that we can do with this now, right? So now we have that Zap working. And we'll come back into Webflow, and I have my form in here. So I'm just going to do the same sort of thing here. I'm going to put an input in here. And so now I have like my input, and I can give it a name. I'm just going to call it, I'll start with the item ID because I have to have the item ID to update everything. And so it's text, and I'll say the value is my item ID. Boom. So now my item ID is there. And then I also need the name to update it. So I can just say, okay, give me another one. And this name will be item name. And then I can switch this from this to the name. So now I'm pulling the name. And you can pull all kinds of information, right? Like anything about them. Like if you wanted, so they're moving to the initial interview. Who's doing the initial interview? Well, like I could pull in the link to the resume, and I could go ahead and email that to whoever's doing the initial interview, just so like they get that information. And they don't have to log into the site. They don't have to go chasing it. I could DM them in Slack, whatever it might be. So I could pass a bunch of different information through here. And then you can save and close, and we'll see that these are here. There's the item ID, there's my name. We'll go back in and switch these from text to hidden. And I always leave them as text at first just so I can see them and make sure I didn't have an item out of place or whatever, and that everything is working the way it is. So now they don't see it. I'm going to remove this button, and then I can just now style the submit button to look like it. So I can say, let's just give it a class. I think these were called button column. So now it looks the same, acts the same, and so I can come in here and say, move to, I can't type with people watching, move to next step, right? And so boom, now we're moving them to the next step, and when they hit that, it's going to submit a form, and then we're going to update. So let's save this and publish and see what happens. So let's refresh here, and then we're going to go to apply, or a tracking board. And now you see move to next step is here. And I'm just going to hit move to next step. Oh, that looks really terrible. Thank you. Whatever. But you see it refreshed now, right? So now I'll show you my cheat. So loading.io. So I like to do this little thing. I'll pick is it going to make me log in? I swear. Okay. So yeah, you can build little loading animations. There are all kinds of different ways to do this, right? So I'm going to change the speed and slow this down. But I'm going to jump back into my project and just steal some colors real quick. So I want, like when it's submitted, we're going to use this midnight blue color here. So that'll be the background. So what I'm going to do is just come in and say the background is this color. And then I'm just going to make all the colors white. So now I've got this GIF that looks like this, right? And I can download this GIF. Come on. Almost there. Like they're showing me one of their loading animations while I'm trying to download one of their loading animations. Let's go. All right, download. Woo. Okay, so I've got it. And so now that I've got this, I'm just going to close here. And I'm going to come back into Webflow. And I'm just going to go to my form. And if you remember over here, I can go, okay, on my settings, I can choose my form block. And I can say, show me the success state. Okay, well, let's change this. So I'm going to call this move success. I should probably be naming things better, but just on the fly here. Move success, okay? And then I'm going to get rid of the text. And then let's measure how tall these buttons are. 39 pixels. Okay, so let's just say... Okay, so there's a really cool app that I like to use. So I don't work for, but Pixel Snap. Google it. It's the greatest thing on the face of the planet. And it's Shift Command F, I think. And you can literally just drag it over things and it will measure them. It gives you little guides and you can measure how tall or how wide or how whatever. I use this all the time. It's just like, it's cheater's way to figure something out. What did I set that at? I can't remember.
I feel bad for Matt. He has a Mac Mini.
Time to trade in. So I'm just going to set the height of this is 39 pixels just to make it the same. And I remember that I used a radius of 10, right? So my radius is 10. And then I'm going to make that background color. I'm going to make it that midnight blue because that's what we were using. And then what I'm going to do is just say, I'm going to add an image to it as well. And I'm going to choose my image and upload. And upload my image that I just downloaded, this GIF. And then I'm going to say, I got to move this back over to the other side here, sorry. I'm going to say don't repeat. Let's put it in the center. And then I'm just going to make this not as wide here. Custom. So that looks right. So now when they submit this is what they'll see instead of a success message. So let's actually jump back up here and go from success to normal. Success, normal. Okay. So I'm going to save this and publish. And then let's go back to the tracking board. So now when I click this, I get that little... And then it refreshes the page after 3 seconds because I've got it set to do that, right? And then in the background, Zapier is going to take that and change what stage they're on to initial interview. So when the page reloads, this tile will be in the next column, and now this column will be empty because I've moved that applicant to the next step, right? So now I've got that. So let's work on that. Let's see what that looks like, right? So I'm going to come back over to Zapier, and I'm just going to make a new Zap. Okay. Yeah, that's what we're doing. So it literally, when they bump them over, it reloads, boom, we're pushing them to the next column. And Zapier, the cool part Zapier has a few different things that happen. There's some actions that are instant, and there's some that are delayed. They run every 5 minutes, right? And so the cool part about it's using the Webflow API, so it's instant. So as soon as that form submits, we're making that change. After 2 seconds, if that change is made, we'll see that move across. Yeah, we've been going for. You guys want to take a couple minutes break? No, you good? Okay. All right. So I'm going to start here again. I'm going to go form submission. And actually, I don't even know what I named this form, so let me look real quick. It's called email form. That's really stupid. I should have named it something else, but we'll just go with it for now. So I would have named it initial interview or review to initial interview or something, right? So I'm going to say form submission. I'm going to save and continue. And then I'm going to choose my site that I've already added and authenticated. and then I can choose my form. So let's say I choose my site, go in and grab this email form, and then now I'm going to continue, right? So as I continue, it pulls in that data. You can see, hey, here is the name, here's the item ID, all that fun stuff. So now I continue, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here to action search, and I'm going to go Webflow to Webflow, and I'm going to say, okay, now let's update a live item, okay? And then let's go to the next step. Let's again choose my site. Now I get to choose my collection. It's going to load here. So my site is this same one we've been working on. My collection is going to be applicants. And now I need the item ID to proceed. So what I'm going to do is just pull that item ID because we had it in our form. And then I need to add in the name here because that's required. So I actually had that too. And then we want to set archived to no, draft to no. Okay, and then now we need to choose the stage. So I think the second stage was initial interview, but like let's go in here and check real quick. So on stage, it's initial interview. So I'm just going to copy that to make sure I have it exactly right. And then I'm going to paste this in here. So that's what their stage will be set to now. And then I'm going to continue. And I'm going to send the test to Webflow. Boom, it was sent. And then if we refresh here, I'm going to cancel this. But if we refresh here on the designer, now we should see that my stage changed. Oh my God, I can't believe they actually are going to give me an interview, initial interview, right? So now I'm on the next stage, and I've moved along. So you see now this column, I need to style this, but this column is now empty because there's nobody there. And I can come to this column, this collection list, and I can say only show me applicants. So let's filter. Only show me applicants who are on the stage of initial interview. So now I'm here. So let's do a fun little test here. Let's come back in here and let's put me manually back to application review. And then let's put somebody else on initial interviews just so there's somebody there with me. Okay. So now we're here. Hold on. So now we should be here. Oop, did I not change mine? Don't freak out on me. There it is. Okay. So now we have me here, this person here, and then I'm just going to publish this real quick. And then if we pull up the tracking board, we should see one person in each. Now I'm going to go back to my Zap, and I'm going to say finish, and I'm going to say go ahead and turn it on. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get it running. I should have named it. We could say, next step. Okay, so now we have that running, and so I can go to my Zaps, I can see it, it's on, next step is running, and I should be able to come back here, and I should be able to say move to next step, and then now I'm in that next column. That first column is clear, we can see it move across, and it's really quick, right? And then you could have multiple forms in this, so we could actually have a button, we have a drop down with buttons to select a stage, and then it puts them in whatever stage we want, and we could actually move people back to a previous stage if we accidentally moved them. So we can just use forms to push data around in Webflow and choose how we want to display things and where we want to put those items. Does that make sense?
So could you potentially, like if you did more, is it possible to use that same form across like each of those columns?
Oh yeah.
Or, because like right now you're setting it up where you kind of need a variation of that form for each one.
Yep.
But is it possible where you could do, like you could maybe have the Zap kind of do a little extra calculation to see what step you're currently on?
Yeah, you could do that. So, so what you could do is you could in this form. So let's go back. In the form here, you could literally put in what step you're in, and then you could have it run a path or do an option with Zapier and say, if this equals this, then this is what's going to happen. Like, we're going to run this function. So it's literally one of those things that you can get down and really granular. Here's what I like to do in this situation. And this is probably overkill, but what I like to do is I come in here onto my HTML embed, and I create an input, and I include every field I have. That way, it doesn't matter what action I want to take or what I want to happen. I can copy and paste that form everywhere, and I've got all the data. No matter what action I want to take, I'm capturing everything, right? So that way I only have to do it once. Because what you'll find you end up doing, you'll put these two in, and then you'll get to a next step, and you're going to want to do like, oh, when it moves to the next step, I wanted to send that. I didn't include the link to the resume here. And I really wanted to, when I moved into the next step, I wanted to notify people. So then you have to go back and you put it in, and then you submit it, and then you redo, you pull in the new data, and you map the fields. So in order to keep yourself from having to do it all the time, I always just start by include the whole kit and caboodle. That way you don't have to redo over and over and over again. Okay? So if that makes sense?
So, but it's just back to the form thing, so not as familiar. If you have it multiple times on there, do they need to have individual names for each form, or is it okay?
So the name is going to be the same for every item in the collection. So what I do is just make the form name different for each collection it's used in. So these are across here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different collections. I would have application form, initial form, manager form, peer form, trial form. And then that way I know which one I'm pulling from. I don't have to like guess. I try to make those different just so I can tell the difference. But you can see how powerful this is. Like literally I can build forms and I can push data around, and I can have hidden menus, and I can do all kinds of things. And then you can have boards like this that say, I only want my hiring managers to see this part. And you can literally say, okay, on these pages, only the people who have this access are seeing this data. And the person who's doing the peer interview, they only see the contact information so they can set up the interview, right? That's all they get. And so they're not seeing everything else. So I have this on the tracking board, okay? And then what I'm doing here is, let's go back to that application, that applicant's template. So here was my plan here, and I hadn't built all this out yet because I wasn't sure how far we'd make it. Because this is kind of complicated, and I feel bad because there's some of you who are like, I'm just starting, and I'm like, here's some of the most complicated things you can do with Webflow. Congratulations. Let's start at the end. But it is cool to kind of know what kind of power there is, right? So what I did was I set up a tabbed element. So this is one of our components that we have in here, or elements, is a tabs element component. So I can grab this and pull it over. What I did is I styled it to kind of look like the cards that I'm using. And then I have a tab for each stage of the interview. So maybe something I want to do is I want to have data for each stage of the interview. And so maybe there's a form I fill out, like after application review, somebody's going to go in and fill out a form and say, reviewed this applicant, everything looks great, I'm recommending we move on to the next step. Boom, that gets sent to whoever needs to see it. It automatically, with this form, we're going to move them to the initial interview stage with that Zap. And then, so now we're in the initial interview stage. We've moved them on. If we go to the tracking board, we can see them there. And then one of the things so I've been working on building one of these, and like an actual working model, all the bells and whistles. And so what I did is I included with each one of these as well a checklist, like on the initial interview, what questions are we asking? So maybe I have a collection called scripts, or under the jobs, I've got a script of what questions get asked for the initial interview, what questions are being asked during the manager interview, what questions are the peers asking, what kind of, we need to give them a guide, essentially, of what questions they ask. And then a button at the bottom, which allows them to automatically create a document that uses the person's name and the current date. So it's a Google Doc. They keep notes from the interview there, and then they can grab that share link and post it in the form at the bottom of those questions, and then choose whether or not they recommend the person goes to the next step. They submit it, and then it moves them to the next step, or it doesn't. Like if they didn't recommend them, it freezes them and puts them in a hold column, right? So you have all of these different options that are available. You can get like really crazy complicated and really go to the limit there. So I love you,
And,
dude.
I mean, I'm sure everybody has a ton of questions, and there's even a couple people here that this is their first time hearing
Yeah.
Webflow. So maybe like, what's your thought on Webflow versus like Dreamweaver back in the day versus Squarespace versus why Web? I mean, I guess.
Yeah, why
I
Webflow?
know that there's databases you can do back end. Obviously, the stuff on the front end from a design aspect is insane, but it's really like a hybrid. I feel like it's the most powerful no-code tool that there is.
I love it, and I mean, I agree with you. So for me, the reason I chose it, it was about time. It was a time investment for me. So I can hand code like every site I build in Webflow. I can go code it by hand. I can spend 4 weeks doing that, or I can spend 4 hours doing it in Webflow, and go do other things. Right? I can take on more projects, or I can actually, I don't know, have a life. Right? Like there are things that it frees me up to do, and there's a lot of power that comes with it. And so I don't know. For me, I feel like if you look at and as a Webflow employee, I hate comparing us to other tools, but with Wix or Squarespace, you're still in a system and you don't have complete freedom. Like you're going to have to be able to code to really visually take it to someplace different, right?
Because there has been some crazy stuff that people custom CSS, on Squarespace.
Right.
And then I feel like you're locked in a box to a certain.
Right, and you can do some. I mean, one of the cool things about Webflow is if you want custom code, you can use custom code, right? Like get after it. Sky's the limit. If you're a developer, like literally, Matt and I just worked on a project where button clicks are making API calls and like all kinds of like you can do crazy stuff, right? Like you can get that nuts. But like if you're making brochure sites or landing pages, I mean, it is like, for instance, I'll just pull up a site that I did here. Boom, boom, boom. So this is one I did for a salon here in Oklahoma City, right? And I could have spent like a lot of time hand coding this, but I was able to spend more time. So I did the branding for them too, and a lot of other things. And so it let me spend more time with them, getting a feel for the personality, really getting their voice and tone down, and then the building part wasn't as hard as it should have been, right? It's a quicker and easier thing to tackle. Like, when on the onload, the fun animations, like all the different things, like you start doing that with JavaScript, and you're going to be like, you got to go find the plugin, and then you're going to be, the easing, like now you're looking up easing site, which easing do I want to use, and now, like what value, you pick a value, you're like, no, that doesn't quite like snap, so then you're like, it's a lot of hassle, and with Webflow, I feel like it's pretty straight up and pretty easy to do. So, I mean, one thing we did last time is I showed everybody real quick how to start from scratch and build a blog. I could start from scratch and just show you guys building blocks on how to quickly lay something out. If that's something you'd be interested in, I mean, you guys tell me. Or if you guys just want a QA, that's fine too.
I had a quick question about the slide views.
Yeah, shoot.
So with the picture and the little block next to it, what did you use? Like what elements are those for divs?
Yeah, it's a great question. So these are divs with flex positioning on them. And so it's just 2 divs stacked there, and then I used IX2 to scale those back, and then on scroll they pop out and come in, and then everything, the opacity on the text and the button comes up.
I have one more question. I'll shut up. So starting from scratch, like I like to think that I know nothing about Webflow. For me, there's 3 different ways to learn it. It's either through the new freelance journey that they just launched.
Pretty cool.
It's awesome, but I haven't had time to do it. There's a way I learned, which they have a whole slew of online courses that literally take you from A to Z on how to do it. And then there's the get in there and kind of rehack it and break it, which I love the clonable section, being able to clone other people's projects or buttons. So sometimes I'll go in there and clone a project and then go in there and kind of see how they reverse engineer how they built it. So what do you think is the easiest way? If somebody's starting brand new, is the freelancer's journey worth it? Talking about the business and the design and all that? Or
Yes.
do you think you should start on the Webflow courses?
So if you're starting from scratch, university.webflow.com that's what you want to start with. Just their basic intro to Webflow. It's really good. It covers, if you've not done web design, it covers the box model. You can skip some of that and learn more just the Webflow how-tos. If you've done any web stuff before, like you understand HTML, CSS, it should come pretty natural. The freelancer's journey is more, it goes from everything, like how to get clients, how to, how do we talk to those clients? How do I keep a client happy? How do I, how do I put a proposal together? What does that look like? Like, they cover a lot of different things that are really good. And so if you're in that stage, like if you're freelancing, highly suggest it. I've freelanced since 2000. I watched it. I learned things that, I felt like I kind of knew, and I learned a lot of stuff. Is great, super helpful. And so they're both and. Rand Segal also has a class on Webflow, and it's a master class, I think. It's unbelievable. He just talks about like the basics, getting started. And then here's the other thing I would say, if you guys wanted to, as a group, collaborate on a project together, we could pick a local nonprofit, and we could work together on building that over the next few months. And so maybe before we leave here, we'd say, okay, we need to start with, first we'd have to pick someplace, right? But past that, we would say, okay, we need to start with layout. We could all play with layout and designs, and we could come back and share what we've built and show how, and talk together and kind of choose something, and then we can all kind of dump all our stuff into that winner, and then we could all take that project and clone it and go to the next part, which is content, strategy, and maybe different things. And those of us who are experts can in those areas can, like Matt's a content person, and marketing, probably some of you are too. So and you guys we could kind of walk through it at the end and hand something off to a nonprofit, which I'm totally cool with doing. Like, we could just learn together and do some good all at the same time, which would be pretty fun.
I think that would be helpful moving forward. I've never built a site from scratch. I've always cloned or done a template or some just whack boy stuff. So I want to build something from scratch.
Yeah,
See how,
from the scratch. Dude, I'm down.
Honestly, so that way.
So I have a Slack that I've been using. I think that we have a Webflow Slack too for Meetup members. But this might be something that would be easier. So what I can do is, before we get out of here, I'll try to get your email if I don't have it. And then I'll just invite you to my Slack, and we'll start a channel for this. And I'll start with some basics. And if you've not used it before, I'll kind of give you some guidance on maybe where to start. And we'll just start with that. And we'll take a vote. We can do a vote and say, hey, who needs help here? Like, who could we serve? And what kind of good could we do for them? I know I've done Boys and Girls Club work before. I know you have too, Nick. You do a lot of work with them. So I don't know if it's something like that, or maybe we want to choose something more local that doesn't have, kind of the or a big of as many resources maybe so we'll percolate on it and find something. We'll just, if you guys are cool with it, we'll just make it kind of an ongoing project that we own. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, or page a month, or whatever. Yeah. Right. Yeah. 100%. We could totally do some of that. Webflow e-commerce doesn't do donations yet. We're working on it. But the good thing is I know some tricks on how to make that happen. So we can rock that for sure. So, but yeah, so I say, well, let's do that. And if I get everybody in Slack, I'll share all these resources that I've got here with you guys, so you guys can have them and take them. And then I'll share places where you guys can go learn, and then we'll start talking about how we can, have fun, but also do something cool for our city. So, if you guys are down with that,
100%.
Right on. All right, you guys want to see any basic start from scratch stuff, or you just want to say hey, I'm good. You talked enough.
If you want to,
Okay.
I have a quick question. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily a show type thing. So I've been searching out to find a off-the-shelf solution to build a dual-side platform. Basically where, combining two different types of people, one person can create an opportunity, another person
Can fill the need. Yeah.
Yeah, in a way. There's a few good off-the-shelf solutions that come close, but nothing's quite cut it. So I don't know if there's any if you have any input on that. Or
Yeah. We should talk after, because we could do it with this. Yeah. Yeah. Let's stay in. Yeah. We'll stay in touch. All right, let me show you guys from scratch real quick. So I'm going to go back to Webflow. And view my dashboard. And I'm just going to start from the dashboard, and I'm going to say brand new project. Oh, that's not even the half of them. If I scroll down, you'd be embarrassed for me. So I'm going to start with just a blank slate. And so when we start the blank slate, you can name your project whatever you want. So I'm just going to call this OKC Meetup from scratch. And then I'm going to create the project. Okay. So project is open. Now this is what we get. We get a blank slate. On the left-hand side, we'll just walk through everything. We have the navigator, which shows the elements that are on the page. We have the add panel, so we can add in different elements. There are sections, containers. Grid is one of the coolest things ever. Columns, div block, link block button, list items, listed items. We have all the different typography, so heading, paragraph, block quote, rich text, links, text. You have the CMS, which is those collections that we were using. Images, videos, YouTube. YouTube is very specific settings. With the video, you can use Sprout, Vimeo, like all those others. And what's great about it is you drop it in here. You just need the link to the video. You don't need embed code or anything like that. We handle all that for you, so you don't have to worry about it. Form blocks, label, all the form elements that you might need. And then tabs. We do have site search built in, which is pretty cool. I love site search. And then what else do we have here? I'm going to move this out of the way. Drop down, lightbox elements, sliders, which I loathe, but people love to use them. You heard it here, hot take. The most overused element in web, the slider. Let's just stop with the sliders. Background video, maps, so Google Map element. You can get your Google Map API key, put it in the project settings, and then you can set your maps across. And then we do have Facebook, Twitter, and then that embed. So I'll just show you really quickly like how you can lay things out, and how I like to lay things out. So I always start with sections. They're my building blocks. And anytime I drop something out here, I can come over here into the settings, and I can choose how that shows up in the code. So it can be a div, it can be a header, footer, nav, main, section, article, aside, address. Like, we can choose what that looks like in the code. And if you ever look at the code from a Webflow project, it's super clean and really, 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 really great code. So, so section, and then so we do have a container element. I work for Webflow, but I'm going to say this is a little outdated, just because it's like, what, 960 or something? 940, 960, something like that. It's skinny. And so, like, everybody has a giant, like, 7 monitor, like, in their house, 7 monitors, and one's flipped up vertical, and everybody's like, cool now. Sometimes, like, that feels a little, like, it's crazy. So what I like to do is I like to put in a div, personally, and then what I typically do is I just call this div block. Up here in the top right hand corner, you can give things a class, so which is just like CSS. You're naming an element. So I just call this like my container. And then once I have it set as like a container, then I like to put so you can put width. I like to just do max width. So I'm going to say at its widest, I'm going to make it 1200 pixels. And then you'll notice that it ends over here and it's floating to the left. So up here in the spacing section, there's this little button over here that centers the element. So if I click on that, now it's centered. And so it's going to be centered on the page. It will be responsive, but if a screen's larger, it's going to go all the way up to 1200 pixels and then it'll stop. And you can choose all kinds of different widths or different ways to do it. But now I can reuse that container over and over again. So this is kind of how I build my content. If I was going to, now I would typically put another div in here. So I would just call this like the section 1 wrapper. I don't know, depending on what I'm building. And then I like to flex things. If you haven't used Flexbox before, oh my God, you're going to love it. So if you choose to display this as flex over here, so we have display settings. You can do block, which is default. We can flex, we can grid, There's inline block, and then there's inline text, and then there's hidden, so you could, people can't see it. But if you go to Flex, affects the elements that are children. So it's the elements that are inside that div that get affected. We don't have anything in there yet, but I'm just going to drop in a couple of divs. So
There's essentially people building full, complete websites just using Flexbox and Grid.
oh yeah, 100%.
Just only.
Every site I build. I live off of it, right? So then I can take here. So now I've got Flex, and then I can choose how these all stack on the left side. I can space them, evenly out, start to finish, space around. What I like to do is just, come in here, and I might call this. I'll just call this, div, and I'm going to set a width of 33.33%, right? And so then I'll just call this same thing div. So now I'm going to give the minimum height of like 300 just so you can see it. And I'll give it a background color. So now I have 3 columns just like that. Now I can start putting, text in here, and I can select this div and I can give it padding on the inside. So now as I copy and paste this over, I'll just copy and paste. So now I've got 3 cards in a section. It's responsive. So this is what it looks like on a tablet, on a phone that's not so comfortable. So what I can do is on my wrapper, I can choose to make this flex vertical. And instead of making these 33%, I can make them 100%. Not 1,003. This only affects the mobile view. So when I go back up, so it falls right down. It's like a waterfall, desktop down to. So now they stack, and they stack here. And I could even put some spacing at the bottom on mobile. You see it's not there on that breakpoint. Walk all the way up. So just like that, I've built the section really quick. So I'll show you like how you can maybe manipulate some data like we start talking about like blog, right? So I could come over here to a collection, and I could just create my first collection. And we do have a template that is blog posts. So I can just click on that, and it gives me all the fields that might be relevant for a blog post. I typically don't keep all these, but for this example I will. I'll just create my collection. So now I have that. One of the cool things that we do is we give you dummy data that you can work with. So by default, I'm just going to go ahead and add 10 items, and it's going to automatically create 10 items that I can use. So boom, now I have 10 blog posts. Maybe I don't have all my data over here yet. And so I want to add this to the page. So I'll just do the same thing. I'm going to drag in a section. So my next section is for my blog, and I'm just going to call it blog section. And then I always put like padding on the top and bottom. And then you could put in a div block here. And you'll remember we already had one called container, so I can just reuse that. So now I have a container sitting in here, and then I can put in a collection list. So I'm just going to add in a collection list here. And then you get to choose what it ties to. I say, so this is blog posts. So now you can see all my blog posts are here. And if I style one thing, it styles them all, right? And so I don't want them to be all set like this. So what I want to do is on my list, I'm going to choose to display it as a grid. And then I can add columns, or I can remove columns. So now I have my blog in columns, and I can literally come in here and add a heading. And maybe this is an H2, and I can get the title, get that text from the name. So now I have the name of the blog post. And then maybe what I want to do is I want to put in a div, and I'm going to say that it's 200 pixels tall, and I'm going to give it a background image, and I'm going to say cover and center. And then what I can do once I've set that is go to settings and say, get that background image from blog post, from the thumbnail image. So now they all have images. And then I can come in here and I can say, give me a button. And so I'll put a button in here, and I'm going to say link that to the current blog post. So, and I'll drag this button out of this div and into just the overall here, and I'm going to put a little space on this div. And then we can say, read post. And so now when they click on that, they're going to go to the blog page, right? So really quickly, we've already pumped this out. I could put in author data, whatever. And then if I jump down to the tablet view, it's 3 columns. I don't like that. It feels a little too just jumbled together. So what I can do is edit this grid, and I can just delete a column. So, okay, now that's pretty good. I can live with that. I can jump down to mobile. That's a little too stuffy, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this column. And it's only affecting this breakpoint. So now, on mobile, I've got this. I climb up, right? And now I have a responsive blog. We did that in less than 5 minutes. And of course, it's not styled just as beautiful as you might want it to be, but it's really simple, and it's flexibility. It's not, hey, give me a template where I plug stuff in. And I feel like this is the most critical thing to make you successful, I think, freelancing or whatever work that you do. Everybody starts with a template. So many people start with a template, or they'll use WordPress or something super complicated. And so you're just trying to jam content in. You're like, okay, it's got this call to action and this picture here. I need to ask them to come up with an image for me, and I've got to figure out what this is going to. It just looks cool, like I'm just going to do it. Instead of taking the content that you have and going, what story do they have to tell, and how can I tell it? And actually building around the content. If we don't need a section, we don't have it, right? Like, we're only going to build around the content that we actually have. Makes your life easier. It makes it easier for whoever you're working with, and it also makes it easier just to tell their story and make their site more impactful, right? So that's one of the reasons I love it. Just that ultimate freedom to really show off who they are and why they do what they do. So,
can you get into trouble on your site by copying and pasting a lot of different elements, like practically cloning stuff?
Yeah.
That's where I kind of just threw in the towel. I copied and pasted too much stuff from too many things, and none of it talked, and it was all.
So,
I didn't know what I was doing,
yeah.
honestly, but yeah.
So let's talk about copy paste. Copy paste is great. Works really well. You can copy and paste from one project to another. Sometimes, if you have a project that's using interactions, so things are animated or they're moving, and we've targeted a specific element, and you copy part of that, but you don't copy all of it, that interaction will quit working because it can't find those other parts. You can set interactions to target specific elements or elements that just have the class name, which is easier to copy and paste and work with. So interactions are always anytime you have any complicated animations, that's a little different, but it's still definitely easier than building it from scratch. But otherwise, the other things, like if somebody's using a custom font, so you can't add custom fonts, you can take any font and just upload it in the dashboard and use it in the designer, instead of having to know how to make that a web font and all the JavaScript that's involved, and cussing, throwing things, crying a little bit, whatever it is that you do, right? Like, and then it still doesn't work. With Webflow, it's pretty easy. But like if you copy and paste from another project and you don't have that font, obviously, it's going to say, hey, we're just going to use Arial because we don't know what you're using, right? So there's some things like that to consider. But what's cool is if there's an image involved, if I copy it and paste it, it brings the image with it, right? Like that asset gets added to the assets of that site. And then whenever, if we wanted to export the code, one of the really cool things is that it writes really, really, really clean code. That you can take and use. You get the HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So even if Webflow hosting maybe is not for you because you need to tie it to some backend or app that you've built, you can export that code and then put it wherever you want and then integrate it into whatever system that you're working with, so that you can kind of can go to town. So even if it's not, the backend is not for you, you can still use it to quickly create a front end and then port it over to whatever you want, right? So I have taken for clients, this was a while back, from exported, turned it into a WordPress template. I will never do it again, just because I don't like doing it. Webflow or die at this point for me. But like, if you're not in that spot, like that's cool too, and you can definitely make it work.
Editor mode is so easy to use. Like I've had other people on our team use it. It's like using Word. It's so freaking easy for them, and it's just like, why would I make it hard on myself?
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, Google it when you get time. The Webflow editor. Look at our Webflow editor page. But man, it's you're editing right on the canvas. It's super easy to use. And
For like a client or
yeah,
internally that didn't know how to deal with this.
client, yeah, 100%. And what's cool is you can lock things, so you can say certain things. collaborators by default can edit, you can uncheck it. So you can make things impossible to break. Like, I don't want to let them switch images and artwork because I know they'll choose some terrible stuff, right? I want to guide them, but they need to be able to edit the text. So I'm going to leave the text open. They can go edit the text all they want. What's cool is because you've styled it, they can't change the style of font. They can just change the content, right? And so if you styled your headings and you've styled your paragraphs and all that fun stuff, they can type whatever they want. You're locking them into, you're making them look good. And you don't have to worry about them breaking your site or it's really their site, but breaking anything where you put all this work into it. Because, not everybody is design conscious. They have these ideas and thoughts and they run and sprint to do it. And if you work with clients like that, it's easier with Webflow, I think, to kind of keep things in their ballpark. And then when they want to make those changes, you can have those conversations with them and guide them about maybe why that's not a good idea and why a better decision for them might be X, Y, and Z. So.
Does that come check mark?
Yeah.
Is there already turned that off by default?
There's not. That's a great idea. I should write a feature request for that too. Good call.
My question is there a way, like on the editor side, that they could like send a comment, like they're looking at a page and like, hey, I want to change this specific thing, like so that I don't know if that might be.
No, you're talking about annotations.
Yeah.
So
Other than like screenshotting it and like
Ghetto writing it on the
I can't give too much away. But there's some cool changes coming. I think that they talked about there's some changes to editors and the collaboration features coming. And I can't say I know all the details, but if you go check out our Webflow blog with what we've shipped the last quarter, there's some cool previews, and some of it's around that. You might want to read that. I want to read that before I say anything about what's coming. So before I might get punched by somebody. So yeah, I don't want to. I can't. I'll just stick to the Webflow answer, which is soon TM for everything. So that's not true either. But anyway, yeah, no, that's a great idea, and I think that there are some cool features that are on the way for collaboration. But like I said, I can't claim to know what those look like or anything. But that's a great idea. You guys are all really smart.
You can tell the Webflow guys, if they can hear this on the mic, I really appreciate how much they often update their blog with like new design inspirations and like.
I'll share that with the team because they'll love that.
They do a great job.
Yeah.
Hater.com's on the blog and check it.
Dude, I read the Webflow blog religiously. We get this notification when a new I post, and I'm like, who is it? Like, what is it? Yeah. Huh? Yeah, I think that's what they do. We listen. We use a lot of that. We believe in no code, right? So like, so.
Actually, with how much Ben Toss has been killing it.
Yeah, makerpad.co. If you guys aren't, if you aren't familiar with it, there's a lot of no code stuff there too. He's so cool. He's a good dude. Also, on that same thought, shameless plug, we have a no code conference, Webflow does, in November in San Francisco. So if you want to hang out in San Francisco in November, you should think about getting a ticket and going and hanging out with cool Webflow people and learning all kinds of no code stuff too. So just saying.
It's like earlier, late, or the date.
Let's look. I mean, we're here. Why not? No code conference. It's going to be cool, and there will be plenty of Webflow people there. I think it'd be definitely worth your time. November 12th and 13th. So, if you're into that kind of thing. Or, like, if you become a ninja in the next 15 days, like you start doing this and you're a natural, you could apply to speak. So, or maybe you're secretly a ninja and you're just not talking too much. Then 100%. So, guys, I can't say thanks enough for letting me ramble on and for coming and being a part of this. I appreciate all of you. Before you get out of here, make sure I have your email. One, I just want to check you in and make sure we marked you as here, so I know who was here. And then two, I'll get us in a Slack so that we can talk, and we'll talk about this nonprofit project and get it rolling. We'll pick a place, and I hope you guys have ideas. I've got a few myself, and we'll pick some place. And listen, there's enough of us here. We might be able to help a couple people. So, so anyway, I think it'd be really cool. So, anyway. Was it? Yeah. Appreciate it. So once a month is what I'd like to try for. I want to, next month we're going to talk about Lottie, which Lottie is, it's After Effects animations for the web. So being able to take an After Effects animation and put it in a website, so one click an animation runs, one scroll, Lottie. And if you just Google Lottie files, there's a whole site where you can go download free ones.
We go to that site really quick.
Yeah.
It's so sick.
LOTTIE.
They all run on mobile.
LottieFiles.com. And you can see some of the cool animations, things that you can integrate in your site. We're going to talk about what that looks like and how you can use some of this with Webflow. So
Is that how Stripe does their animations on site?
Stripe, like Stripe's design team is on another level. Like I was going to tell you right now, like they're legit. Yeah, 100%. I am in awe of someone's like, there's a new Stripe feature out, and I'm like, what's the website look like? Like, I don't even ask about the feature first. I'm like, I'm sure it's cool, but well, what did they do? I want to know. So, all right.